Douglas Murray looks poised like a cat.
Yeah.
Douglas Murray destroys Eric Weinstein.
There was blood everywhere.
Not the way I cut it on my YouTube channel. So the issue is we have got to get more level-headed about immigration. We've got to stop fetishizing immigration. Yeah. Immigrants are not some special kind of person who's better than whatever you have in your country, which is how our politicians often sell it. Very often what immigrants do is if you have an economy that isn't growing at the proper rate through technology and really technologically led growth, you can create as-if growth by letting in more people to support things like a pension plan. So very often what people are experiencing is that they're being lied to about immigration by immigration experts. Immigrants somehow are a free lunch, they only create good things, they never create bad things, they don't tax systems, and then we treat everybody who wants to restrict immigration, like me, as if they had one reason for doing it. And what is that? Xenophobia, right? Now, somehow, I married an immigrant. A giant chunk of my friends are immigrants, so I'm living in an immigrant experience, even though my family isn't, recently immigrated. So I never had any fears because I'm fascinated by language and music. Everything in my life suggests that I'm fascinated by foreign cultures. If you are, then in general you want borders because anything else is it's like pouring all the paint together. You're not going to get some beautiful rainbow in a can. You're going to get, some sort of homogeneous thing that's not as interesting. So we've got to get away from these crazy ideas, this mimetic complex. In the US, we've got a poem on the base of a French statue that was given to us, written by somebody who was not part of the French delegation, Emma Lazarus, saying, "Give us your poor, you're tired," as if this was American immigration policy, which it has never been. It has never been our immigration policy, right? And we have to exclude people at borders, right? Borders, fundamentally, you're going to dilute people. And then you're going to treat people who are being diluted. Your vote will be diluted if you let in more people. So you have to be able to acknowledge that there are negatives with immigration.
And as you say, if you're
I'm on a head of steam here. Okay. The thing that you have to realize is that the people who hold the cards on the immigration narrative have this idea that if you let any daylight in with saying there's problems with immigration, you get some sort of horrific outcome.
Right.
And those people need to be humiliated.
Well, look what the German government's been doing. The beginning of January of this year, the government in Germany enacted a new law which it's actually not entirely clear what it can do, but everyone already knows what it can do from social media, Facebook and so on. It's parts of the German government, including the intelligence services, working in conjunction with unnamed media companies to restrict the debate of the general public on these matters. Now, I just put it out there. Lots of Germans fuming about something they think of as being very unfair. What is the best way to make that blow up? Almost certainly to try to put a lid on it, dampen it down. A German publisher said to me recently, the public now here read our papers in the same way that people used to in Eastern Europe. They read between the lines. They read that yesterday a person did something to another person in a place. And they know they're not being given the information, so they fill it in themselves. Because they didn't name the person who did the act, it must have been a migrant, etc., etc., which actually means that the public mind thinks even worse than the facts that are happening. And, and people think there's no potential downside to this. Just one other point on this. Eric hits, this is a subject of fascination for me because it's such a terrible moral question to try to answer. I like Eric. I don't have much tolerance for people telling me about the greatness of German culture and the importance of reinvigorating it and so on and so forth, because our ears start to jangle with rhymes and echoes. But at the same time, it's not possible, as Eric points out, it's not possible for a culture to live in permanent guilt with no form of redemption, ever. Ever.
And it's not fair.
It's not fair.
So,
right?
If you notice, having a conversation on immigration, I have, in a civilized way, waited to let you finish, which is part of the importance of this conversation. I was going to say that actually everything you said there, and that's what's if people in the audience do identify as centre left, The last thing you want to see is the breakup of the European Union and its surrendering to far-right populism. And I can guarantee you, until we and unless we reconsider this conversation around immigration, it will destroy Europe, not just in a cultural sense, but in a legal sense. So I'll give you an example of what's just happened in Denmark. A liberal, in the European sense of the word, in the British sense of the word, a liberal head of state and prime minister in Denmark has just overseen the approval in the Danish parliament of a law that is an attempt too late to deal with this question of a lack of integration in their country, of what they call immigrants and children of immigrants, and it's a euphemism for Danish Muslims. And what they've decided to do is approve a law in the Danish parliament that they will designate certain areas as, and they're using this word, ghetto areas. And the children born in these areas, who are born to immigrant parents but are born in Denmark, are named ghetto children. That's actually the phrase they're using. And they've decided, because they can't do this by religion or race or gender, they can do it by geographic area, and it's constitutional. And what they've said is that every ghetto child in these designated areas that the law stipulates will be obliged to go to citizenship class to learn how to be a Dane, and if they don't, the family will have their welfare withdrawn. But that doesn't apply to children who are outside of these areas that are the ghetto areas. The other thing they've said is that anyone who commits a crime in these ghetto areas will face double the punishment in criminal law than anyone who commits the same crime outside of these ghetto areas. You can see how a parallel legal system is in danger of developing here. And of course, what they've done is in Sydney, I think you have Lakemba and a few other areas where there's Australian Lebanese Muslims. Is it called Lakemba? What is it called?
Lakemba.
Lakemba,
Yeah,
yeah,
Lakemba.
yeah. Right, so you can't say, okay, I'm going to do this where there's Muslims. What you could say is, okay, Lakemba is a troubled area. I'm going to do this in Lakemba. And everyone knows what you're really talking about is Muslims, right? Now, there is an example in liberal Denmark where this has happened. It's already, that's the case now. It's approved in Parliament. And of course, the dangers of a parallel legal system are self-evident. The dangers of grievances developing and people feeling like they are being judged for the same crime in double the punishment and therefore being discriminated against, all of that doesn't really need me spelling out. Why did that happen is the question. Why has liberal Denmark suddenly in their parliament approved this? And that's because of years of neglect of this one question, and that is integration. And it's why I'm saying that it's inseparable. We have to have a policy that ties immigration with integration and a sense of what the culture is of the countries that we're in. And that means slowing the whole thing down, because you can't have integration if your immigration is too fast. And so when I say to everyone who identifies here as centre-left, if Western secular liberal democratic civilization is what you genuinely want to preserve, then the fastest way to its destruction is to have an uncontrolled immigration policy that leads to these sorts of things that we're currently seeing in Europe, to a point where the far-right party can be the official opposition in Germany in 2018.